Welcome to Thrive Orlando's very first virtual gala. My name is Yvette Finley, and I'm the Executive Director for Thrive Orlando Women's Healthcare.
And I am Terese Williams, a Thrive Orlando Board Director since 2018. Since 2002, Thrive Orlando, formerly known as Cornerstone Ministry Village, founded by Pastor Coleman and Tracy Pratt, has been on the front lines of the abortion plight in East Orlando. Thrive Orlando is a Christ-centered medical clinic which equips people to make life-affirming decisions in their pregnancy, sexual health, and relationships. In a culture of death, we seek to bring the truth of abortion and the truth of the gospel to every person that comes to Thrive Orlando. And we are able to do that because of you and your support.
You may know that every year Thrive Orlando hosts a fundraising dinner to honor the life-saving work of Thrive and to introduce new friends to our ministry. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and our desire to protect our attendees, we decided to bring our Engage to Save Gala to you. On behalf of the Board of Directors, the Thrive staff, and the amazing staff volunteers, we invite you to engage with the women like Monique, who found herself facing an unplanned pregnancy just as she became engaged and her career was taking off. In her panic, she searched for a clinic that would provide an abortion. But instead, she found Thrive, where she learned the truth about her baby and was saved from the devastation that abortion can bring.
In 2019, Thrive Orlando came alongside women and men who found themselves in an unplanned pregnancy. Your support made it possible for us to be a source of information to help them make a life-affirming decision. Thrive shares information on all their pregnancy options. We offer no-cost pregnancy tests, limited ultrasounds, pregnancy options education, which includes the procedures, risks, and side effects of abortion. We also provide adoption information and referrals, parenting support and coaching, as well as no-cost STD testing for positive pregnancy tests. In 2019, Thrive served 438 patients. 96% were at risk for abortion. 71% of pregnant women chose life. 100% of the patients and many of the fathers were offered the gospel of Jesus Christ. 24 women prayed to receive Christ for the first time. Many of you engaged with Thrive and saved lives.
One of my favorite memes during the COVID-19 pandemic is the year 2020 being compared to a park slide that's actually a cheese grater. All kidding aside. For you, for me, and for Thrive Orlando, it's been a really challenging year, one that no one could have anticipated. I feel it's appropriate to quickly share with you some of the challenges Thrive faced beginning in January of 2020. Yes, before COVID. In mid-February, it was discovered that from the beginning of the year, Google had flagged our website as problematic, meaning that our website had issues, and most of it was because of the age of the website. That meant our Google AdWords were not approved, and our presence on the internet went dark. It certainly answered our questions as to why we were not having many patient visits. In March, we made the hard decision to close our offices due to the impending pandemic that was ravaging our planet. Shortly thereafter, I received a call that our clinic had been burglarized. In 10 minutes, criminals stole laptops and other electronics. They damaged the building and left us feeling very vulnerable. We also had incidents where we were cyber hacked on Facebook and our website broke for a day, which confirmed we had to create a new website. Due to the pandemic, the ultrasound training for our nurse was canceled twice, leaving us with a shortage of sonographers. Our dedicated staff and staff volunteers fought discouragement. We closed our clinic doors to protect our neighbor from the virus. We assumed that abortion clinics, like Planned Parenthood, would also close. But to our horror, abortion clinics were considered an essential service, and they kept their very profitable services going. It seemed like evil was prevailing. We began the new year with goals and aspirations to see 1,000 women, to change the narrative that had been set by the 4 abortion clinics in our community. But it became apparent that was not going to happen. In Genesis 50:20-21, Joseph says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Tonight, I get to share with you what God is doing by His grace and power through the ministry of Thrive, because God keeps His promises and He hates the taking of innocent lives through abortion. Thrive was the first pregnancy medical clinic in our area and one of the first across the nation to begin telehealth appointments, just 2 short weeks after the doors closed. Through that process, we started taking steps to go paperless for our patient permissions and records. We also reached out to patients who had newborn babies and were able to offer them resources of diapers, wipes, and clothing. As a matter of fact, one woman I met shared her story that left me in tears. She visited our clinic 4 years earlier, addicted to meth and pregnant. She decided she didn't want to have an abortion, so she gave the baby the gift of life and put her up for adoption. Since that time, she overcame her addiction, got married, and became pregnant again. She remembered how she was served at Thrive and wanted to come back with this pregnancy. She gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Her husband furloughed because of COVID, and so she was thankful for the supplies she received. We received a generous grant from the Vitae Foundation to develop a new website that boasts a new logo and a look that is both appealing and relevant. We also have a new donor website that you will get to see tonight. We developed and began offering our new and improved parenting program, Aspire. Although our mobile medical unit, Hannah, cannot be used to see patients at this time due to the pandemic, she is a beautiful, shining billboard.
On May 4th, we opened our doors again with many safety and health protocols in place. We are seeing a steady increase in visits and anticipate more to come with our new patient website and the other measures Yvette shared with you.
In the short time we're here together tonight, you will be introduced to the women we see at Thrive and hear their stories, their voices. You will also get to hear a timely message from Dr. Albert Mohler. Dr. Albert Mohler is the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. He is an esteemed authority on contemporary issues and has been recognized by influential publications like Time and Christianity Today as a leader among evangelicals. His work on behalf of the unborn has inspired and challenged me to not only be a part of the movement for life, but to want more for those who are at risk in this culture of death. I am excited for you to hear this message tonight. Teresa and I will be back after you hear from Dr. Mohler, and you will get to hear how you can rise up and be a part of the movement. Every week, approximately 200 women in Orange and Seminole counties make the choice to end their pregnancy in abortion. At Thrive Orlando, it is our goal to meet these women before they make that choice. Every woman has a story. I invite you to hear from 3 of these women.
We are the women facing unplanned pregnancies.
We are your daughters, your sisters.
Your friends, your mothers.
These are our stories. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. My parents, it would let them down. I knew I had to have an abortion.
I had a plan, but I found out I was pregnant right after we got engaged. I was not ready to be a mom yet.
I'm a single mom. I brought my son to Thrive with me because I had no one to watch him.
Thrive uses the Socratic method, so our advocates are trained to ask questions designed to help each woman reflect on her situation, empowering her to thoughtfully respond instead of simply reacting.
I was so nervous when they called me back, but they asked me questions. It helped me to slow down and think about my situation and made me feel safe.
When the woman at Thrive asked who would support me if I continued the pregnancy, I realized my fiance and my mom would help me.
When the advocate asked me how I felt about being pregnant, I told her I was in poor health and wasn't sure I would survive a pregnancy. I was worried about who would take care of my son if something happened to me.
Thrive communicates to each patient that we do not profit from her decision. We are here as a resource of information so that she can make an informed decision for her situation.
They offered me information on all my options for this pregnancy, and I only wanted to hear about parenting and abortion, definitely not adoption.
They shared so much information with me. It helped me realize that I had options to consider. And I liked that my fiance was able to hear it all too.
I like that Thrive offered me so much and it was all free. I was so confused, but it seemed like they really wanted to help me.
At Thrive, we begin every morning in prayer, and throughout the day, every patient is offered the gospel. We know that only the Lord can change lives and save lives.
They asked me if I had ever heard of the gospel. I knew about Jesus, but I had never heard of anything like what she told me. It made me want to follow Christ.
The woman asked if she could pray for me, for us, and she wanted to know what I would like to ask God to do in my life.
I wasn't interested in hearing about the gospel. I'd heard that before. I did let her pray for me, though, and that was nice.
Our nurses have the privilege to show a woman the reality of the life she is carrying. A clear explanation of the ultrasound, including gestational age, development, and the fetal heartbeat, can be a powerful piece in her decision-making.
When the nurse told me I was only 5 weeks pregnant, I knew I would have an abortion. But when she told me I could come back next week for an ultrasound, it caused me to rethink everything.
When we saw the heartbeat on the ultrasound, it hit me. That was our baby growing inside. I started to think that maybe we could do this. Maybe I wouldn't have an abortion.
I had mixed feelings about the ultrasound. Now, I knew there was a life inside of me, but I was so scared for my son and for myself.
Every week, we see women making life-altering choices, and we offer support to them. Parenting support for those who choose life, and post-abortion counseling for those who do not.
Because they invited me back, I had time to think about this pregnancy before I came in for the ultrasound. After the ultrasound, my decision was made. I let everyone know that I would keep my baby. 8 months later, Christina was born. She is my pride and joy.
My fiance and I decided to continue with the pregnancy. We do not regret our decision to parent young. Having our little girl turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to us.
I left Thrive well informed. I knew I had an important decision to make, but I still wasn't sure what I would do.
71% of our patients choose life. 99% are satisfied with our services. 86% choose to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. And as they leave, we trust God knowing they have heard their options and heard the gospel. We trust Him with the outcome.
I'm really glad to have this opportunity to speak to this event on behalf of Thrive Orlando. You're about a very important work at a very urgent time. Let's consider the times. We're living in an era that is seeing the comprehensive depreciation of human life. We're seeing the subversion of human dignity. In many ways, this is the inevitable outgrowth of developments we saw in the 20th century, and not just beginning in 1973, but certainly reaching a horrifying moment of clarity in the Roe v. Wade decision of 1973. That would not have come about had there not already been a growing move for the legalization of abortion, which we need to understand was a growing movement in this country, led by ideology, an ideology against the very sanctity and dignity of human life that demanded a constitutional right to destroy unborn life in the womb, human life. Since Roe v. Wade, 50 million American babies have lost their lives in American wombs. 50 million. That's one of those figures that staggers the imagination. And it's not the only representation of the subversion of human life and human dignity in our times. Just consider the fact that as we're thinking about the culture of death and its encroachments on our time, we see every single human life. We see every single human being and the dignity and worth of every single human being subverted by a society that increasingly demands that we get to define ourselves. We get to define what it means to be human. We'll decide who is human and who is not. These are very complicated times. When we think about the movement on behalf of the sanctity of human life, and we think back to the early and middle 1970s, abortion was just about the only major forefront battle, but that is no longer the case. And one of the things we need to realize is that the dignity and sanctity of human life is not only an objective fact, which is anchored in human dignity as God's gift, as God has made every single human being in his image. But it goes back to the fact that when human life is subverted and its dignity is denied, it will be denied comprehensively. And so what we're watching in our country right now is the encroaching threat of euthanasia and the logic of the culture of death. We see it in a worldwide pattern in which so many nations and cultures are now confronting the question of abortion when it never would have been imaginable before. Perhaps the greatest symbol of this right now is the nation of Ireland. We're looking at a very dangerous age. It's a particularly dangerous age to be a baby in a womb. That confounds all human wisdom. Because think about the fact that given all the medical advances of the last half century, it should be that there has never been a safer place to be than in a human womb. It should be that there has never been a greater likelihood of safety and sanctity recognized within the human womb. And yet it is not so. And it's not because of medicine. It's not because of biology or physiology. It is because of morality and ideology. This is a very complicated issue because it's a human equation. We're talking about human beings. You know, when we think about the tremendous revolution in morality that has taken place during our lifetimes, one of the things we need to recognize is that it has largely been driven not only by the ideologies that form the idea framework, but by the emotion that becomes invested in these controversies and in these movements, and eventually tends to reach the hearts and minds of a lot of Americans. Many women spoke of their plight in the workplace and in other places by an unplanned pregnancy, as it became defined. And you had others who were pressing for other fronts in a moral revolution, and they told their stories, and the stories became very compelling. But the point we need to recognize is that as compelling as those stories may often be an emotional force, the unborn child does not get to tell her story. The unborn child does not get to tell his story. We're looking at the reality that when you try to establish a moral code upon intuition or emotion, then you set yourself and your entire society up for taking a great moral fall in the whims of emotion. But it is a human equation beyond just the political reality. It's a human equation when we think about the fact that there are millions and millions of women who are now faced with what they believe to be a choice between life and death, a choice between now or later, as many of them are told, a choice between all kinds of options in a world in which we're claiming to have a power of choice in just about everything. We are dealing with a legal reality in which we're talking to women and ministering to women. We're concerned about women who have been told that they have a constitutional right to abort the baby in their womb. We're facing a complex challenge in that we have to not only meet them with ideas, we must come with truth. We must not only meet this issue publicly when it comes to the cultural confrontation, we have to be ready to have real-life conversations with women who are making decisions. Yes, we believe it shouldn't be a decision, but practically speaking, in the year 2020, it is a decision. And that's why ministries such as Thrive Orlando are so important. It's why we, as those who will stand for the sanctity and dignity of human life, have to do so not only in our vote and not only in our voice when it comes to public affairs, not only in our churches, not only in our conversations amongst ourselves, but we have to throw ourselves into the mix, entering into the conversation with those who are making decisions about life or death. And yes, all the arguments of the other side are being heard loudly and clearly in our society. They're being trumpeted by the mainstream media. They become the established orthodoxy of academia. And of course, even the political debate is so truncated and so often confusing that it's not very helpful to an individual trying to figure out these issues. Our responsibility is to provide the voice that isn't there. The responsibility of an organization like Thrive Orlando is to enter into the very real life dynamic of not only speaking on behalf of life and contending for life, but offering a word of encouragement and exhortation, coming alongside women as they are confronting this very urgent, indeed infinitely important decision. I love the word thrive, because God's vision for humanity, making every single human being in his image, is not merely that we be alive, but that we thrive. As you look at the book of Genesis and the entirety of the biblical message, it's important to recognize that God's vision for humanity is, yes, flourishing, a thriving, a fullness of life. And as Christians, we believe that that points more fundamentally than anything else to the gospel of Jesus Christ. But it also points to the fact that when we confront anyone who's involved in making a decision about abortion, when we come alongside a woman who is now confronted, sometimes with enormous external pressures on her to make a decision that would lead to an abortion, our responsibility is to say, we do not want less for you than the culture of death wants for you. We want far more for you. And we believe that that far more for you will include far more for that unborn child. It will mean not only life, but thriving. And that's a far deeper commitment, isn't it? That's more than a conversation. It's more than a billboard. It's more than a set of ideas. It's more than a political argument. It's an actual movement. That's what has happened and must happen in the pro-life movement in the United States. We must understand that we have a far broader responsibility than just abortion, as if you can say just abortion, because we understand that the encroaching culture of death is at both ends of the life spectrum. It's in the beginning of life when it comes to abortion, and let's face it, we're now looking at the reality of what can only be called legal infanticide throughout much of the United States, but also at the end of life, when there are those who are just declared to be now expendable, outdated, life no longer worthy of life. But then we understand that if indeed the sanctity of human life is threatened at the beginning and the end of life, it's threatened at every point in between. But we understand we also face this enormous challenge of creating a movement that will press back against the vision of thriving, the vision of the good, the vision of flourishing that is offered by the culture of death. Just think about that. We have the great opportunity to hold out not only to the women that are ministered to, not only to the couples and families that are directly affected, not only on behalf of those little ones in the womb, but on behalf of an entire society, to create a movement that will say, we want for you more than the culture of death, than the abortion rights movement, than all of those voices can possibly offer or promise. We want not only to affirm living, but thriving. I'm so thankful for Thrive Orlando. I know you are. I know that your involvement in this work and in this movement is because you believe in the dignity and sanctity of human life, because you care about those babies. You're brokenhearted to think not only about 50 million human lives aborted in the womb since Roe v. Wade, but every single one of them. And right now in Orlando, you know, decisions are being made that are decisions between life and death. So I hope you support this movement. I know your involvement, even at this point in this event, means you care a lot about this movement. But it's our responsibility to make sure that Thrive Orlando and movements like this are expanding and growing and ever more able to do what they have been called to do to fulfill this incredibly important mission. Because decisions are not only the decisions between life and death that are the main reason that Thrive Orlando exists, but the little decisions about whether or not we will contribute to the culture of life or the culture of death, minute by minute, day by day, person by person, dollar by dollar. God bless you. By God's grace, may more human lives be saved and more human lives be enriched by Thrive Orlando.
These are indeed urgent times. In fact, some of you may have wondered about the number Dr. Moeller mentioned. There has actually been 60 million abortions since Roe versus Wade. You can simply look at the staggering number of abortions that take place in our backyard. Between Orange and Seminole County alone, nearly 11,000 abortions took place in 2018. It does appear, for many created in the image of God, the most dangerous place for the unborn life to be is in the mother's womb. Wherever you are watching tonight, please stop what you're doing and take 60 seconds of complete silence right now. The silence represents every unborn child's voice that did not get to tell their story. Every human being created in the image of God whose voice was silenced by a choice, a decision that was made from fear, misinformation, or inconvenience. Dr. Moeller was correct about so many things he said tonight, one of which is Thrive Orlando's desire to affirm living, to affirm life that thrives.
Given the staggering number of abortions that are taking place, and the comprehensive depreciation of life, as Dr. Moeller expressed, light and truth is needed more than ever. People in our community need to know before they were born, God chose them and called them by his marvelous light. How will they know unless we are able to reach them? We are needed in the community, and we are here standing on the front line available, wanting to share the truth in love with compassion and respect. There are many unknowns for all of us during this pandemic, but in the context of this evening, we know abortion clinics are offering abortions. 3 clinics in our city offering late-term abortions. Abortion clinics like Planned Parenthood are not closing their doors, but instead are taking advantage of women and men in this crisis.
This brings us to the most important time in our night. This is the time I get to share with you how you can engage to save. This year, we hope to reach more women through an enhanced and targeted digital marketing plan. By putting more money toward Google Ads and social media accounts, we believe we can reach more women. We have plans to explore radio spots, online streaming music stations, and launch street teams that can flood local businesses and residential areas with marketing pieces. The women in our community deserve to be presented with the truth about pregnancy and the truth about abortion. As we bring this evening to a close, I want to share with you how you can engage with Thrive Orlando and save lives. Tonight, I'm asking you to partner with us. As you begin to contemplate your investment in Thrive Orlando, let me put your investment into perspective. $70 will provide a pregnancy test and options education for one patient. $250 gives a patient all we have to offer, which is a pregnancy test, options education, ultrasound, and STD testing for one. $1,200 can save one baby. Some of you tonight are being called to engage in a bigger way, like giving $10,000, $20,000, even $50,000. No gift is too small or too large. Your gift will determine how many women will receive the truth about abortion. It will determine how many women will receive life-saving ultrasounds. It can also determine how many people will hear the gospel and trust Jesus for the first time. It can determine how many lives will be saved now and in eternity. Fundraising events like this one are critical to our ministry and mission. As you know, we have ongoing needs that rise up. We are grateful to you and to so many who have committed to a monthly giving. It has broadened our ability to meet those demands. Monthly support is critical because it allows us to plan and move forward in confidence. Monthly giving is an act of faith. At least it has been in my life. But when you choose to trust Jesus with your time, talents, and treasures, you never lose. Before I share with you the instructions on how to give and engage to save, I would like to pray. Please join me. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for our friends, our partners that have chosen to join us tonight to hear more about the work that you're doing through Thrive and through your people. And I pray tonight, Father, as they seek to ask you how to engage and how to partner with Thrive, that your Holy Spirit is speaking to them, Father, and that they are obedient and courageous enough to answer that call. I thank you that we get to stand in defense of life, and I thank you for the lives that will be saved. In Jesus' name, amen. We're asking each of you to make a giving decision tonight on how you will engage with Thrive Orlando, and we've tried to make it as simple as possible. Just go to our new website, partnersofthrive.org, and click on the menu button for our virtual gala. We are also posting the direct link in the chat box. Once there, you will see the option to give now or commit now. If you are ready to begin monthly support or to make a one-time donation tonight, click on the Give Now button. You will be directed through the steps to give from a credit card or from your checking account. If you would prefer to make a commitment to give in the future, click on the Commit Now button. You will be directed there to a few questions that will allow you to communicate with us about your future one-time gift or monthly commitment.
You can help us press against the culture of death that permeates nearly every aspect of our culture. You can offer women, men, and babies the gift of life. You can join the movement by engaging the voices of Thrive, one woman, one man, one baby at a time. By engaging, you will have the privilege of knowing that some of the voices of the children that could have been silenced by the abortion industry are now voices of children roaring with laughter.
Before we close tonight, I want to spend a moment thanking our founders, Coleman and Tracy Pratt, for their commitment to a vision and a calling to defend life. I also want to thank Tim McGuire, our president of the board of directors. You have been a mentor and a champion to me. Thank you for your 8 years of service to Thrive Orlando. We will fill your void. Thank you for joining us tonight. You are the reason why each person Thrive Orlando serves, born and unborn, is given the chance to thrive.